listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined with my lovely friend, Breanne Anderson. She is the owner of Celestine Harmony, where she offers intuitive, energetic healing, women's empowerment coaching, and soul readings. She's also a restorative yoga teacher, the founder of Celestine Sisterhood, and host a sacred sisterhood circle. Welcome to the show.
So glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. It's so nice to hang out with you in person after all these years of knowing you online. So.
Yes, it's an honor.
Yeah. So, all right, well, let's dive in. Could you give us a little background on yourself and what motivated you to create your business, Celestine Harmony?
Absolutely. So, the fruition of this new chapter in my life was buffered due to my own trauma, my own pain, and just the experience overall. It wasn't until I was at my lowest point in my life that I realized that something needed to shift. Mm-hmm. That's whenever I began seeking out therapy, doing a lot of EMDR work, and then beginning my journey with energetic healing. So it was in that moment that I was in what my healer called survival mode. Just at that critical space where I just needed to be able to get through the day.
Right.
So she took me on very quickly. I think I was able to get in with her that week because she knew that I needed help. I needed a shift to happen. I needed to get back to my own equilibrium. And it was through working with her, diving into those deep, very old wounds and healing those, that I was able to step into my own power, my own truth, and the highest version of myself. And so it was from these experiences that I was able to gain the clarity and vision to bring these businesses into this 3D reality.
Right.
So it started, this new chapter started after working with my healer, clearing out some of these traumatic experiences that I'd been clinging on to my whole life: sexual abuse as a small child, emotional, psychological abuse from other partners, that my life really started opening up. That's whenever I got the call to pursue healing in a way that I could help others because of how much I resonated with the healing myself.
Right.
So that just opened up a whole new spectrum of life for me. And that's where Celestine Harmony came in. So I knew almost immediately that I wanted to work exclusively with women, that I wanted to help empower them in order to allow them to see their own truth, to step into their healing space and open up their lives into what their greater purpose was.
Yeah.
So this has just been all very organic. It has unfolded naturally. Celestine Sisterhood hit me one night when I was meditating, like, women need a space in the social media that they can come and land and not feel like they're going to be judged, eradicated, pushed down even more, but to be able to talk about things that are taboo in the big spectrum of life, to be able to be their authentic self without feeling like they had to shrink back.
Right.
So that is the whole reasoning for that coming about. And I'm so grateful so, so grateful for that, because I've had women come to me and I've been able to watch them heal and thrive in such short periods of time.
Right.
So, in a nutshell, that's kind of where everything has come from.
Right. Yeah. I've been on a healing journey the last decade. It's like little, I'll find like one person and they'll help me heal like one piece. And then it leads me to the next person. And it's usually like the last healer will almost disappear. Like when I'm done with them, I don't, it's like they're off the grid, but then someone else will come in. And it's like I've used all these different types of healing and I needed them all at different points, but EMDR, I am like a huge advocate for that because it really does. Like when you clear out some of that trauma, there's all this room for the beauty to come in. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it really is a catalyst for a lot of people. Like it's hard to do it. It's hard because it's going to bring everything out. So it's like almost like a mind detox or something. But then, the magic comes in and it's like we align. I don't think people realize how much the trauma takes you out of that alignment, and you like start identifying with it and it holds you back. But yeah, doing this, like the sisterhood circles and like just any kind of therapy, like it's good for us. Like even if you don't think you have trauma, or there's not like one thing, I'm like, just, do some meditation or something. Like there's probably something in there. Maybe someone made fun of you in like second grade and you don't realize that you still judge yourself based on some weird opinion from your childhood, and it shifted your whole identity. So when I did EMDR, like weird things would come up and I'd be like, holy crap, I didn't know, I was so upset about that. And I still actually have that. I was still holding on to it. So I'm like, that really is a big shifting point for me too. So
absolutely. I think that's it's so powerful to be able to see how it's all connected.
Right.
Because before it was like, oh, it's all these like separate events. Mm-hmm. But whenever you really start diving into this healing work, it's like, oh, wow. So this is why I put myself in this kind of position over and over and over again, mm-hmm. was to try to fulfill this need that didn't get met whenever I was little, right. or an adolescent, or even a young adult, right. And this is ongoing things that are happening to humans across right. the board. It doesn't matter if you're in your 70s,
right?
Because I can see these scenarios playing out over and over and over and again until we break that cycle, like we were talking about earlier, this mm-hmm. addiction to suffering.
Right.
It's hard to open yourself up to the experience that you were meant to have.
Right.
Because all you're identifying with is that story.
Right.
And you keep telling it over and over and over.
Right.
When there's this whole limitless reality out there waiting for you just to open your eyes to. But if you don't do the work,
yes,
like you said, if we don't sit in meditation, if we don't start digging into these internal conflicts, this cognitive dissonance that's occurring, this fight, mm-hmm. then we just don't see it. We can't see ourselves with clarity.
Right. Exactly. And really, before I started doing therapy and stuff like that, when I would sit down to try to meditate, as soon as I would like close my eyes, all like a bad story would come up. And I'd be like, how am I supposed to sit with this? So it's actually kind of hard to meditate if you haven't done the work, because it's like your spirit wants you to see it. So as soon as you relax, and this is why people get like addicted to like having constant experiences or like television or alcohol, is because like as soon as they get still, our spirit is like, hey, you need to clear this out. Like you need to address this because it's an issue. But we distract ourselves from that. It's like we don't want to experience it, So I feel like doing something with a therapist and an actual healer to hold your hand during those dark moments it's really needed, especially for stuff that's very long. It's been going since you were a child. I don't know what I would have done. I've just like cried into like people, like they're holding me. I'm like crying. They're like in their hair, like, and they're like with me in those moments. And that's where the breakthrough comes from. And there's this like compassion and you're just, I don't know. I know there's like a stigma around people wanting to start therapy, but I just like, want people to just like move right past that and just allow yourself to be vulnerable with somebody. You know, obviously pick one that you trust, that you know aligns with you. But I really don't think I wouldn't be where I'm at right now without the guidance and support of my healers, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, and now, like, in retrospect, looking back, I'm like, wow, look at all these, like, beautiful people that have
Yes.
been placed in my life over the years that were helping me.
Right.
My teachers, you know, and how beautiful that is. I mean, just even, like, thinking about a yoga teacher, you know, like, wow, like, I'm so grateful for those teachers. And now I can step in and be that beautiful person that holds this space for another human. I
Right.
mean, when we're in restorative yoga, I'm sitting there and I'm telling my students it's okay to feel stuff.
Right.
Whenever we're moving our body in a specific way, stuff is going to start coming up. And I just give them permission to just be with that.
Right.
A lot of times after class, I'll have people crying, coming up and just needing a hug.
Yeah.
But that's a safe space. You
Right.
know, just to be you, to start the experience. If you're too weary of, like, you know, going out and seeking therapy, that's a great place to start.
Right.
You
And
know?
so much of it is stored in our body. So, you know, when I was doing EMDR, she would suggest certain movements, like where I would cross across the body and all this stuff. And that was like, if I went home from EMDR and like something kept coming up, I would do these movements. But a lot of it is like it's stored in us. And so even doing restorative yoga, if you haven't done a lot of mental work, as you start moving, you know, and allowing that space, like things just start coming out, you know? So it's almost like you can't avoid it. Like once you start doing yoga, like you're already moving that kundalini around, you're starting to awaken. I don't know how people can just do yoga as exercise and not have any kind of mystical experience. Because I just feel like as soon as I start, you know, consciously breathing, you know, allowing myself, like even like savasana at the end. I mean, it's just, it is a mystical experience. Like, I don't know how to separate it. You know, I know some people do, and that's great, you know, but it is a spiritual process for me, you know.
And in reality, we really don't know if they're having a spiritual experience or a mystical experience or not. You know,
Right.
I think the theme overall in our society is just to stuff everything down.
Right.
So people may be having an experience, but they're denying that they're even feeling anything.
Right. I feel like if you're crying by the end of the class, it's kind of hard to deny that something in you has shifted.
Yeah, it's stirred up.
Right.
You know, and I think the way that I process healing now is whenever something is coming up, it's moving through the body, it's come up into the mind, it's time to release. So we have a conscious choice at that point in time.
Right.
We can see it, we can consciously choose to begin releasing and letting go, or we can do just the opposite and push it back down, which causes dis-ease.
Right. Yes.
Disease, you know, and that's where I started really opening up, was whenever I realized that, wow, so this has been coming up over and over and over and over and again, and I just kept telling myself this story in my head of, oh, I'm not ready.
Right.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this experience. But how do I know that?
Right.
How do I know that I'm not completely equipped and ready unless I'm willing to try?
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So could you share with us a little about what a healing session with you is like? And can you explain some of the things that you specialize in?
sure. So I call what I do intuitive healing. I was trained, I'm a master energetic worker under Blue Star Celestial Healing. So I'm tapping into Pleiadian energy to understand what each of my clients needs. So every session is different depending on the individual. Some people come to me and all that they need to do is talk the entire time. Some people come and just want to have cards pulled to find out some information. So say like an example of that would be like, I don't even know where to start, and this is where they're coming to me from. We can just start pulling cards and see if anything starts coming up. Like if they have specific questions about, well, what I don't even know I'm here. Because that's sometimes whenever people show up, they're like, I don't know why I'm here.
Right.
I'm just here. And I'm totally fine with that because I've been in that position too. I'm like, I'm just being led.
Exactly. I've totally had that happen.
And I don't know. But here I am.
Right.
You know? And then there's other times where it's like a mixture of all three. So there'll usually be a little bit of talking. I try to work that like empowerment coaching on the front end. So whatever, say, a client is dealing with at the time, we just try to start to shift that mindset initially. And then I pull cards to give them a little bit more guidance about the situation that they're dealing with. And then I get them on the table. And the information that I've received all comes from my meditation prior to them arriving at my house. So I typically like people to book out at least a week ahead, just so I am prepared mentally for their arrival.
Right.
So I can do my work to make sure that I'm clear and delivering exactly what it is that has been downloaded into me to help them. So in order to keep my ego in check, I sit in meditation. I confer with the Council of Light. That's what I call it. It can be called whatever you want. The higher beings. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're connecting in to a higher way, you can call it whatever it is that you want to call it. But I pull a card. I have this specific deck that I always go to for the overall message of the healing. I pull a card, put it face down, sit in meditation, listen to what it is that needs to happen. I turn the card over. It is the exact same thing. And that's just to keep me in check.
Right.
I don't want to be going off on this path where I'm just like, oh, this is what you need. And my ego is running the show.
Right.
You know? And so that keeps me right-sized to where I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I tell my client a little bit about what I've experienced as far as the knowledge and wisdom that I've been given about them. And then I get them on the table and pretty much just do whatever my intuition is telling me to do. If they have some sort of blockage in their root chakra, a lot of people come to me because they have problems with safety or money, or, I mean, there's a wide array of things, self-confidence. A lot of people, women, show up with me that have been sexually abused themselves. So we're going in and we're clearing out whatever is blocking them from living their highest, I always say highest and best life. So we're going up into the unmanifest. We're clearing out whatever it needs to be cleared out back to the root so that that experience can still hold the lessons that we had that experience for, but we're taking out like all of that emotion
that's attached to
that's associated with it, that's keeping you in that same like storyline. So whenever I bring them back, we're just carrying the lessons and that's it. And so whenever, like, say that experience comes up later down after we've cleared it, and you don't really feel that emotion, but it's like you're sitting there like questioning yourself, like, should I be like crying right now? You know, and sometimes you'll cycle back into that just because you want to. But you don't have to anymore if you're willing to just step on that new timeline. But again, you know, that stuff comes up. It's like it's testing you. Like, are you really ready to let that go? Or not? So you can go back and then we can clear it again, but you don't have to. And that's the beauty and the magic of what's going on, because we can use this powerful energy to shift that completely off your timeline.
Right.
instead of it just being like this toxic cycle that you're stuck in.
Right. Yeah, it's the cycles, like especially if you start doing healing and you have to keep going back, you're becoming very aware that it's cyclic. If you're going to your therapist every week talking about the exact same situation, you're like, wow, maybe I'm stuck in a loop. And you can really see how this would prevent you from ever expanding into your true self because you're just, hitting play and then rewinding every day. And some people do get caught there, and it's really hard. I know some stories are really hard to let go of. But
Absolutely.
wow, it's beautiful when you finally do. And, like with EMDR, what I loved about it is that now I can still share my story, and sometimes I will, about toxic relationships or whatever, if I think that it would help the person.
Mm-hmm.
But like I can tell like a really bad story, and I don't get upset about it. I'm like, this was just, this did happen, but I was able to release my attachment to it. And now I would only share it if I thought that it would help somebody else, because they can see me now and they're like, oh, wow, she seems happy. She seems genuinely happy. And I'm like, they're like, how would you get like that? You see, like I have a Capricorn moon, like that's sad, like when you read it, you're like, wow, that's really sad. Like, but I had to do the work. I don't like identify with that sadness for the rest of my life, but I recognize that I needed that to put me where I'm at. And it really does create empathy for people. And I can like look at people and I can almost see it in their eyes. Like there's a sadness. And it's because I used to look like that. I look at pictures of myself. I'm like, wow, like I really don't look like the same person even. Like
Because you're not.
Right. I'm not. I'm a totally different person. But yeah, it's so nice when you can see somebody finally get out of the loop, and they're like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm creating a new path. Like, that's the beauty of these types of healing,
Absolutely. Like, we don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
But I understand, too, how painful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Like, I'm not trying to minimize that in any way.
Sure.
And that's why I'm so grateful at this point in my life for all the experiences that I've had, because now whenever people come to me, I'm not just like looking at them and being like, oh, that's really sad, like
Yeah.
I'm looking at them as a human, and I feel like that is the whole point,
right?
Is that we can see each other, like you said, and have this compassion, this empathy of like, wow, yes, I know,
that's a hard
I know
loop.
how hard, yeah. But I'm also standing here in a completely new life, just as you are, and know that there's a different way.
Right.
And how beautiful and magical it is. Like, there's no way I could put a price on that.
Right.
And that's the power. Like, whenever people come to me and they're like, oh, well, I just can't afford this. And I'm like, sitting there, and I'm not going to like scold someone, but I'm looking at them and I'm like, what is the price for healing?
Right.
What is it?
Right.
Do you want to feel terrible the rest of your life?
Right.
Probably not.
Right. And if you do the healing up front, I really do feel like in some ways it prevents you from future issues, So you're paying for your health now. You're getting mentally healthy. You're working on the body. You're loving yourself. If a disease does come up in the future, even, you're going to be able to approach it differently, versus going straight to this like victim thing and then thinking, oh, this is going to really kill me. I'll never get out of this. Like, I feel like that self-empowerment, like you carry that with you and everything after that, it never leaves. So to me, spiritual healing is worth the money because most of it is like quantum, and it's not something you go and have done and then you just move on and forget about it. It's life-changing.
Absolutely.
It shifts your whole vibration. It shifts your path. Yeah, you might have to come back for some support, especially in the beginning. But like, I'll be doing stuff sometimes where I might get triggered or something stirred up. And I remember something that a healer did 5 years ago. And I'm like, and when I think about it, it's almost like I bring that energy now. And I'm like, so just because I had some Reiki thing done, 5 years ago after EMDR, like when that memory comes up, if I start feeling that, I am still connected to that moment because to me, there is no separation. I'm still that person. I'm still the future I'm going to be the future person, So once it's on the timeline, once you set it in place, it's a quantum thing. It extends way past the present moment.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Like, time is not linear at all.
Right.
Like, we can be pulling stuff from all over the place. Like, when we go up into the unmanifest, it's limitless.
Right.
I mean, can your brain wrap around that? Like,
Right.
it's out there. Anything and everything you can possibly imagine that you want or desire is possible.
Right.
So, it's not just all when I'm doing healings, or it's not all just like working through all that. It's like, well, what are you wanting to like draw in? What, how can we put you on the timeline that
you
is manifesting what you truly want?
Right.
Because it's not limited.
I know.
It's vast.
Right. I feel like it's been intentional that we've been sort of brought up in a very limited society and thinking, oh, well, you're always going to be on the grind. You're always going to be at the job, suck it up and work the crappy job, like
Sure.
do your part. But it's like, you have to like completely get that program out of your head. And once you stop believing that and start believing in yourself and saying, no, I can actually have a job that I love that helps others. I can align with people that love me back. Like, I don't have to stay in these toxic friend circles. I can change my whole life, and like, I was a victim to that, because I have, some toxic family ties and stuff. And I had a point and I was like, I never want to feel this way again. And as much as I can send love to those people, I'm like, that will never happen to me again, because I will not allow that. Someone that treats me like lesser than a human being is no longer allowed on this timeline. So they can exist on that other reality, whatever. But here, I only attract love and people that build me up, So it's been amazing,
And that's putting yourself as a priority. We've been taught our whole lives, be selfless, be selfless. When that's not,
There's a balance.
That's not the gig.
Yeah.
I mean, when we shift that and we're
Right.
like, oh my gosh, by actually like taking care of myself and being selfish and putting
Right.
myself as a priority for the first time in my life, I can actually show up as who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
I'm not a second thought.
Right.
I'm not in the background while everybody else, like, I think that was something too. I noticed I was like, I want happiness for everyone else, but I'm just supposed to be over here unhappy. Like that is so backwards.
Right.
Like when we put ourselves as a priority, when we do the healing, when we're like, oh, actually, I do deserve to feel the things that I want everybody else to feel.
Exactly.
We shift the whole program.
I know. Yeah, me and my husband were sitting down one day and just like talking about like the big things that have shifted, and we're both like, I think I'm important. And I'm like laughing, and I'm like, of course we're important.
Absolutely.
Like we're the one looking out of our eyes. Like, we incarnated here for a reason. Like, of course we're important. But we've literally like thought that maybe we were just background people. And I'm like, no, this is my life. Of course I'm important, or I wouldn't have been here. There's something I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, it's sad that it took me like 30 years to figure out that I might be important in my own story. So
But gosh, at least it's not 70.
Oh, exactly.
So that's
much
what I
time.
give people permission. I'm like, now. Like, we
Right.
don't have to wait. You don't
Right.
have to wait till you're on your deathbed to feel all this like sorrow and like, oh, I should have done this with my life.
Right.
We don't have to do that.
No.
We can step into the new timeline now.
Yeah, anytime you're ready, you can just jump right on over.
Yep.
So
That's
join us.
Please.
So, could you share, I mean, I guess that's kind of what we've been talking about, but a little bit of the basis of the Celestine Sisterhood and where our listeners can find it.
Oh, yes. So the Celestine Sisterhood is the sisterhood group that I have created on Facebook. So that's where you would Google search Celestine Sisterhood, Celestine Sisterhood. And it's got an eye with like a green, blue background. And all I have to do is approve you to come in. But this is just a safe space to talk about anything and everything, to begin your journey of being visible, and just being seen for who you are. And that is a powerful a powerful thing for especially a woman that has been pushed down and pushed out their entire lives. Told that their experiences aren't valid, if you want to talk about like gaslighting or anything, like all these experiences that a lot of us share. This is just a space to come in and start finding that wild woman that's within, that natural, primal, beautiful, feminine woman that you are. It's such a powerful thing to have a space like that. And so this is the Celestine Sisterhood is the group that hosts Sacred Sisterhood Circle.
Okay, so they go together.
Yes. So the women that are involved in that group, some of them aren't in the group just because they don't participate in social media. But that is the same group of women that are doing these sisterhood circles where we're coming together in person, we're moving together, we're talking, we're sharing and holding space with each other, we're touching. I've found over the years so much of healing is just touching another human, because we get so individualized in our little spaces that we forget there's other humans there, and part of shifting that pain or whatever needs to occur is just letting yourself be touched.
Right. And just like your auras even coming together, like that when you hug somebody, I mean, you're really uniting that your energies, and like I feel like both people come out of a hug slightly different.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's science backing that stuff now, like the oxytocin being released after just like touching another human for 20 seconds. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be hugging.
Right.
It can just be someone having their hand on you.
Right, your shoulder or...
And your body starts flooding with all these like feel good.
Right.
And so it makes sense. Like, wow, like why sick people stay sick. It's like we like retract from the sick as opposed to moving closer to them, and what they really need is human touch.
Right.
And so that is such an integral part of this healing work that we're doing in circle, is just moving closer to each other, as opposed to looking at each other and being like, oh, well, you've had that experience. That means I'm a little bit better than you. And let me just like back up. I'm sorry. Like, no, what we're doing is we're seeing our shared experience, because what happens to one woman also happens to another.
Right.
And once we start tapping into that energetic level and we're healing collectively, like as another woman heals, you are.
Right.
And that's such a beautiful exchange that is occurring. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be a part of it and bear witness, like as I step in and I shall share my vulnerability about anything, it allows another woman to tap into her own, to have permission to step out of the shadow, to step into her light and be a healer herself.
Right. And just setting the example. Like I remember, like coming out of high school and like starting to go to some spiritual like things and meet people, most of them were like 20 years older than me. So they'd already been doing a lot of work on themselves and stuff. And I remember like seeing them, and being like, this person is beautiful. And like when I'm around them, like one of the first examples is my college English professor, and I adore her. She's like an angel and really shifted me onto my path. She took me to my first meditation retreat, and she would like read my Emily Dickinson, like book report and be like, okay, this girl needs some help.
Yeah.
And she was just this light, and like I would just watch her, and like even when she wasn't talking about something technically spiritual, the way that she would read or like the way she would move, and I'm just like, oh my God, like what has she got that
energy.
I don't? Yes, but I had never in my life seen an example of somebody who had stepped into their purpose like that and radiated. Every word she spoke radiated. It didn't matter what the topic was. Like and it drew me to her very much like an angelic thing, like because she just was shining, and so she wasn't just an example, but like she also noticed me, and like she could see, oh wow, like, she looks vulnerable, she looks sad, like, and she reached out to me, and it changed my whole life, and I don't talk to her regularly now, but like, look at like her just being that example and putting herself out there,
Absolutely.
and
The
existing.
catalyst.
Yes.
Yes. And that is part of us stepping into our authentic nature, like being who we actually are. Like, there is no comparison.
Right.
You're not supposed to be this person that's standing beside you.
Right.
You're not supposed to be comparing yourself to that person or trying to do what they're supposed to do. You're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And holy cow, whenever you realize that and you give yourself permission, like, who am I? That's when the mystery just starts, like, like, wow, like, this is my life.
Yeah.
Like, this is all allowed to be magical. Is this really, like, it's almost too good to be true.
Right.
Because it can be so surreal, like, giving yourself permission just to be you.
Right.
Like, who are you?
Yeah. And I feel like when you start stepping into your true self, like, you start attracting these people towards you. And I'm not saying just like people that are toxic, but maybe they're wounded, but they're ready for your energy. So you're going to, just by you existing, you're going to be that light now, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, like you're never going to be dimmer by helping somebody else. It just lights the room up even more. And like, to just look back and think, wow, like, just by me being who I am, and not hiding that, I was able to impact the whole energy of this room, and now I'm doing what I was, looking up to like last year, because like I'm stepping into my truth, and not holding back. I worry with, like, when I first started this podcast, I'm like, what if I overshare, and I'll do like oracle readings, and it's like all the time, like, come out of the closet, always speak your truth, like, don't worry about this or that. And I always laugh because I'm like, maybe I should hold back, maybe I shouldn't have talked about Moana that day, whatever. And then the card is like, no, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
So just like rolling with it, like, if it feels good and it feels like you're supposed to say that, or if you're supposed to go to that place, like, follow your intuition,
That's it. I mean, that's all. That's intuitive healing.
Right.
When I get people on the table, I just let it flow.
Right.
I don't try to hold it back. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, whenever I'm like second guessing myself, like when my guides give me these numbers and stuff, I'm like, oh, good. I'm like, I really don't want to say that. Like, I'm like, what if it's wrong? But it's crazy because it's like spot on.
Right.
It's like the age that this happened.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't pretend to know everything.
Right.
I just let my intuition guide me. And that's how it opens it up. I mean, we can just be channels if we want. We don't have to take ownership for every single thing, Most of the time, if we're talking about like aliens and stuff, like, we're receiving guidance continually, like, whether we listen to it or not.
Right.
Can be the path that you walk. It can be simple things like right and left.
Right.
Go to this store.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's crazy. Once you start tapping in, it's like that. You talk about people being brought into your life. Like, I can't count how many times I just go to a place because it's like the ecstatic dance the other night. It was like, oh, just go there. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Here I am.
Right. I feel like lately all the events I do, it's like a gut response.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I'm like, that sounds good, but it's like, for whatever reason, like, it doesn't sit well. And it's not that I won't do it eventually, but I'm like, it's not the time.
Yeah.
And then something will happen that weekend and I'll be like, I'm so glad I had space for this. And I didn't know, I'm like, I really wanted to do that. And, people would invite me to something and I'm like, man, that sounds awesome. But for whatever reason, I don't know if that's where I'm supposed to be. I don't know why. But yeah, and I don't know if I would say it's a voice. It's not like some man, like, narrating, but I want to call it just like a gut thing. It just like makes me, it's like a feeling, and things start shifting and I'm like, that doesn't feel good. Or I'll be like, wow, I have to be there, and I might not know a single person at something and I get invited to it and I'm like, that sounds good,
Yeah.
Like, I'm about to do the Starseed. I think it's at Alchemy where you're at. it's like a star seed. What's it? A group? Or
It's like a starseed meetup.
I have no clue.
Yeah, but you feel compelled to be there. And
Yes.
so that is your authentic self
Right.
showing up.
Right.
You don't necessarily like looping it back. We don't know sometimes why we're in certain places.
Right,
We're
exactly.
just like, I don't know. I got a ping. I'm supposed to be here.
Exactly.
And that's all it is. Like, just let it. You don't have to overthink everything anymore. It doesn't have to be this like, well, if your gut feels off, that's your gift.
Yes.
That is your gift. You know, like we all have these different gifts. What is that? Clairsentient. Whenever you feel stuff, I'm clairaudient. Like I hear it, you know, and it's just like, would I have paid attention to that
Right.
had I not given myself permission to? But geez, I'm so glad I did.
Right. Right. I know. We're like so disconnected from like our higher selves and stuff that we're like, what is this voice inside me? You know, what am I hearing? Like, what am I feeling? It's like we're not fully integrated even into our bodies sometimes. And I feel like we're like dissociating and all that. But like when you're fully present with yourself, like there's no denying that something is trying to get your attention.
Absolutely.
And like, that it is coming from a higher place, you know? So yeah, it's beautiful.
One of my favorite quotes right now is walking. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's walk into the room like your ancestors sent you there.
Yes.
Just step in. You're meant to be there.
I know.
Like, quit questioning yourself. Like, you're here for
Right.
divine reasons. So let's show up.
Right. I feel like once you start allowing yourself to see the magic, it's literally everywhere. It's so cool and wild, and like sometimes I'll just like start like crying because I'm just like, it's just so intense to think that,
Absolutely.
wow, how is this all so divinely organized, you know? Like
It's bigger than we can wrap our heads around. I mean,
Yes.
for sure. Like, think about numbers, whatever, like, spiritual animals you're connected to. The signs
Right.
are everywhere.
Right. Oh yeah. I'll have some experience. Like the other day I woke up early. I never wake up this early, but I couldn't sleep and I like got up and went out and I'm, having my coffee on the porch. It's like super misty, the sun's starting to rise and the stag just walks across the yard and it just pauses and starts staring at me. Like it's not afraid. It's not like coming down, but it's just like there.
Like, wow.
And so I'm like looking up, like, what is the stag energy? What is
Sure.
this animal trying to tell me? And for whatever reason, in that moment, that's what I needed to hear. Like, and I'm just like, always, if an animal comes up to me like that, there is a reason,
No doubt.
because I see deer all the time, but a stag in the mist with the sun coming up behind it, I was like,
On the morning that you're usually not up this
right? I'm like,
early,
I
and
hear you, I
it's
hear
like,
you. Right, Justin ended up walking out like 30 minutes later, and there was just like a hawk, like sitting in a tree, like very visible. Usually you don't like see them, just perched like that. And I was like, look, our spirit animal up for today. Like, but I just love that. I love the messages that spirit sends me. It makes me feel like I'm in alignment. And if that's the thing, like if you open yourself up and you look the message up. So if you see, 111, and you're like, okay,
what is that?
what is that? And
Yeah.
you look it up. Like it always ends up validating, what you thought it meant anyways. Like you're usually like intuitively,
But that's like our check system. Like,
Yes.
keeping it like in check. Like, okay, so I am on the path. And the
Yes.
more and more like we learn and start trusting ourselves, we don't even have to look it up anymore because we're
Right.
like, oh, seeing a hawk.
Right.
It's like validating, it's teaching me, it's showing me. But yeah, I mean, the tools are there
Right.
if we just use them.
Right. And that's what I love about like doing this podcast is just sharing some of the different tools and the different things that people use, because there's all sorts of ways to do these things. It's just as unique as but to like hear an example, like some people might have never used oracle cards in their life and they hear it on the show and maybe they're
Curious.
like, okay, that sounds good. I think oracle cards are such a great way, like you've been saying, like to validate your experience, and they're not evil, like if I'm always telling people, like if you feel like it's like could be evil, then just put all this light around you, like before you do a reading, just imagine a protective bubble and like nothing dark is allowed in, and some people need that because there is a lot of stigma around.
Absolutely. I
some of
mean,
the-
I do something similar whenever I'm meditating. If I'm going and I'm like really seeking like some sacred wisdom, like say we're talking about healing someone, I mean, I don't take that lightly. So in my meditation, I'm going up, I'm going into this room. To me, it looks like this white room. There's nothing really on the walls. It's very like spaceship looking, inside, just very clean. And I have gatekeepers at the other side, and I know that only certain beings can come in there.
Right. And it's just your safe haven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't mess around.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want some like dark thing coming in
Right.
telling me this is what this person needs.
Right. You want to make sure it's coming
way.
from the higher
Absolutely.
realms.
And for the greatest benefit for that person.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. My name comes from a place actually that I created that ever since I was a child. And I didn't know about astral projection. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, it was some hardcore dissociating that just happened to lead to astral projecting. And I would go to this place that I created, and every time I would go there, I would create a little bit more, and like add another tree or whatever. But it ended up just becoming this like sacred meadow, in the astral plane.
Oh, wow. So cool.
And so I remember it took me a few years of like meeting people with really cool spirit names, and I'm like, I don't know what mine's gonna be, like one day I was like there in the meadow and I'm like, this is who I am. I created this, but it is me. It comes from me. It is like we're creating our own reality. We're creating ourselves, So I'm like, I am Astral Meadow. Like I started identifying with it and like, this is my meadow,
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's a safe haven. Like if I do work where I feel like I'm like working with other energies and stuff, I invite them in there, and they're only allowed, no one's allowed in without an invitation.
Exactly.
So it does help me feel extra safe and protected, that no one that has any darkness or dark intentions is allowed. So that's just a good ritual I would like to share with anybody that has like fear around, astral projecting or whatever, because there are some weird things in the astral plane you want to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I mean, don't go in just like thinking everything is all peach and roses. I mean,
everything is light and dark.
Absolutely.
Everywhere, every plane, every sphere, every thought we have has light and darkness. So we just want to be aware of it and just live in our light, and then it's just going to shine right through that darkness. I feel like once you get on such a high vibration, some of those lower energies, like they just can't even meet you where you're at because they're so heavy and dense. So it's like if you want to work with those kinds of beings, you have to actually lower yourself down to even get there, So.
But just being conscious too that we do have this darkness,
Right.
And sometimes that's where the greatest light can occur.
Right.
I was thinking earlier about the experience of whenever I meet another woman and she is just shrouded in darkness. She's sitting in her darkness. Like I can literally go and sit in darkness with her.
Right.
But then like, just like the yin yang, like there's the light within the dark. I can light this little bitty flicker, this little bitty candle.
Right.
And just start being there. And wow, like when we do that, when we go into that darkness, when we stop shaming the fact that we're in this space, again, there's alchemy.
Right.
Like we can shift the whole thing.
Right.
If we want to.
Right.
So I try to teach my clients not to go away from the darkness so much because there's a lot of magic that can occur there.
Right.
If we stop running away from it.
Right.
And we actually use it.
Right. Darkness is creation. In our mother's womb, while we're being created, we are in the dark.
Yep.
You know?
That's the birth.
Yes, exactly. So you can't just completely pretend like you don't have darkness within you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where people get tripped up because, and I did this for years where I would just bypass stuff. And I'm like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I would tell myself, like, I'm supposed to be here. Like, all that crap I just can't look at it. You know, and I refuse to look at it. And I think that's why I felt so bad.
Right.
You know, and I would go deeper and deeper and deeper into this hole.
Right.
Because I wouldn't look at it.
Right.
I wouldn't do anything with it. I just pretended it didn't exist.
Right.
But whenever I bring that awareness to, like, wow, I've had these really dark experiences. I've been through this dark stuff. I can shift it.
Right.
I can play more in the light, but it's that awareness that, oh, wow, this does exist.
Right. And honoring that part of yourself and giving it like all that love and like some kind of grace or something, like just to, like, I see you and I know you're there, you know, this is who I am now, but I can, you know, you're always going to have some kind of attachment. I mean, unless you're, you know, about to like ascend into nirvana, and most of us aren't at that point, you know, so some people are born, they're incarnated, they basically incarnate ready to go. Yeah. So like they're not going to create any darkness, whatever. That's really rare. That's like an ascended master. I don't feel like that the majority of us are probably there. We're born, we have trauma, we have suppressed stuff, we have shame, we have guilt, you know, whatever. So it's going to come up, you know. I feel like I'm over here living my best life, you know, but we're in Scorpio season. So, like, there's been times and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is so intense, you know, and this is me. And I try to be positive most of the time. And I have the tools and I have all the stuff. And still, there's moments where I go into darkness.
Sure.
You know, and I'm just like, but the thing is because I can honor that about myself. It doesn't, like, just set me back. Instead, I just sit with it. And I'm like, why am I having an anxiety attack right now, you know?
And think about all the energy that's floating around. I mean, literally this past week, I've been watching people collide all over the place. I can't even count how many wrecks I saw in Pellissippi the other day. It was like, I was like, how many? I was just looking over at the side and I'm just like, wow. And it's happening in my daily reality. You know, people colliding into me. They don't want to face what they're feeling. And so they're taking it out on the next person. Luckily, I can hold space for that.
Right.
You know, so I just want to tell people too, you know, whenever you do get attacked, don't take it personally.
Right.
A lot of times people are just like at their breaking point and you just happen to be there.
Right.
You just happen to be in that space at that time. And we can sit there and we can hold compassion for them.
Yes.
Which is, you know,
very challenging.
Yes.
But see, the challenges are good for us. You know,
So
when we get annoyed
grow.
with people and we get pissed off, it's like when that situation's over, I'm like, okay, I didn't do my best, you know, but I can like see what they were triggering me that might have caused me to get like more angry or something, where instead of just being like, I'm a mirror, you know, they're projecting on me because I'm a safe person. They know I'm not going to like beat them up. So they're like, it's like your children, you know, you're their safe haven. So they're going to treat you like crap when they're upset because they're like, mama will be there, you know? So sometimes I feel like that motherly energy out in the world too. And I'm like, okay, they're breaking down on me because they feel comfortable around me. So then that's just like, put your protection up, don't take their energy on, but you know, like reflect back to them, you know, with compassion, you know.
Like, can we turn it around though and just be like, this is a test?
Exactly.
Like, this is my opportunity to level up.
Right.
Should I choose?
Right.
Or I can go back and I'll get this test again.
Right.
Probably in a week.
Yes, it will keep coming up, man. That is like, it'll almost drive me crazy sometimes. But there is no true avoiding anything. So you can, like you said, you pretend it's not there, whatever. But at some point, it's going to make itself known.
It's going to be in your face.
Right. You can work on it a little bit at a time when it comes up. Or you can keep blocking it. And then you have a big issue, you know. So then you're not going to be able to ignore it. You know, it's going to manifest as something very physical at that point, you know, to get our attention.
That's why I like the analogy. I like to think of like Jenga. So we could burn it to the ground, right? Like, and have to, oh my gosh, that's so hard too. I do not recommend. Or we can imagine like our life is like a Jenga. We can take one program out and put a new one in.
Right.
And I like that a lot better.
Right. It's more gentle, you know?
It's
and
gradual.
that's just giving yourself the space as things arise. Because it usually doesn't happen all at once, you know, like something will come up and I deal with it, you know, and then something else will come up, you know, and I think that's how it's supposed to be dealt with, you know, but goodness, if you avoid it, man, it gets crazy. So, I try not to do that too much, but I mean, we all do at some point.
Sure, we're human.
Right.
We are.
Right. I try to I have like a whole lot of Capricorn energy. So in my mind, I'm like really striving for perfection all the time. And I can't help it. It's just like kind of like this unconscious desire in me is to reach some state of perfection. But then I keep telling myself, I'm human. You know, if I was going to be some ascended master, I would be there, but I'm not. I'm here and this is where I'm at. And I'm just going to honor all of these
perfectly imperfect.
Exactly. Like it is perfect. Like where I'm at, even if I don't respond exactly, like I'm supposed to learn from it. So it is perfect. But yeah, I'm still stubborn about it sometimes. So, all right. So, you were one of the first people to introduce me to human design, which I don't know if you knew that. I always think of you when I read about manifesting generators. I'm just a generator. So I'm like you have this like extra oomph with yours, but could you share a little bit with us about manifesting and how you've worked with it?
Sure. So the cool part about human design, and I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up too. I'm just a generator. Okay, so let me just break this down for a second. Okay, so generators are the magic makers. Okay, so generators are looking at one project at a time. So I was thinking the other day about you after we had talked a little bit at the ecstatic dance and how you're like, I'm just a generator. But I was thinking about like all your little projects that you do.
Right.
You know, you're creating little felt donuts or you're making some art, but it's just channeled for one thing at a time.
Right.
The difference between generators and manifesting generators is that I'm doing like a million different things at a time. Right. So I could be jumping back and forth between, we're like the ADHD of human design.
Right.
But for real, like I'll be jumping over here, like this is working good. And I think that's another reason why a lot of manifesting generators like to do a bunch of different jobs.
Right.
So, you know, for example.
And
like,
you're a Gemini. So that just that is.
I'm over the top. I'm Gemini sun and moon.
Right.
And then I have this Virgo rising that just makes me appear perfect. And I'm just like, all right, I'll just work with this. Mother Earth. Little perfect Mother Earth over here. Chaos. Woohoo! But as far as manifesting, man, oh man, I have manifested some stuff. Like, and it's coming in like all the time. Like literally, that's why I have to be so conscious of my thoughts.
Right.
Because I can attract something so fast. And if I'm not aware of what I'm manifesting,
right,
I'm going to have a big pool of crap.
Right.
You know, if I don't, and that's another clue for me. Like if I haven't been doing yoga or I haven't been meditating or I haven't been taking care of myself, going to my healer, getting body work done, massage is great. I can get myself into a really weird funk really, really fast.
Right.
But on the other hand, when I am taking care of myself and putting good nutrients in my body, I'm a huge believer of adaptogens. Lowering the cortisol level in my body, helping my body adapt to stress better. When I keep those in my body regularly, my brain just functions so much better. And I can manifest anything.
Right.
Like right now, I'm manifesting these huge projects, which I will not disclose yet. But just huge things that I just can't wait till they come forth. And the only reason I don't disclose them is because I don't want other energy influencing
Right. You
them.
want to focus it.
Yeah. So I'm so close to manifesting these huge beneficial things, and I just can't wait.
Right.
You know, like it's just once you start tapping into how powerful you truly are, you don't want to go back. But again, that's a lot of responsibility.
Right.
So at that point, it's like, well, I'm responsible for bringing this in.
Right. You have to put the work in.
Yeah. So if you're bringing in a bunch of crap, then you're like turning it back on yourself, being like, more shame, more of this, you know, and that's not how we corrected.
Right.
I'm not correct, maybe isn't the right word, but that's not how we shifted.
Right.
It's really just coming back to the present moment and realizing, oh yeah, I am super powerful.
Right.
Like, what do I want to bring in?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up with manifesting, because I think we always think about manifesting something good, but like you say, we are powerful. So we can go either way. You know, if we're only focused on like darkness and surrounding ourselves with darkness, then we're going to manifest more of that, you know? And so it really does. It's like, it's kind of up to you, but it's not just all pretty and beautiful. Like, it's only like that if that's what you're focusing on, you know? So yeah, that's good. I don't usually think about manifesting in the negative way, but we totally are.
Yeah, it's all energy.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're sitting there, and that's why, like, whenever I'm working with people with like addiction or something, I'm trying to help them understand that we don't want to keep thinking, I want to stop smoking cigarettes. I want to stop smoking cigarettes.
Right, because then your mind doesn't hear the not. Yeah. It's just hearing cigarettes.
And that's what you're like. You're like, dang, I want a cigarette. Well, no, really? I wonder why.
Right, because you keep thinking about cigarettes. Yeah, I've, used to smoke cigarettes, and I had to use that mindset and just take it out of this equation altogether. Yeah, I would try to sneak in there, but instead I would go like make tea and go sit outside.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because really what I actually wanted was air. So I would smoke a cigarette to get out of like a group of people, because I just needed to go out and breathe some air.
Yeah.
Why am I smoking a cigarette? I'm like, I actually just wanted to breathe, so now I'm like, I don't have to smoke to go outside.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna step out and get some air, and I actually do that now.
Yes.
But that's one of a very hard cycle, but I feel like when you're ready, you really can.
Well, that's manifestation too. 101. Yeah. That's exchanging habits. That's reprogramming your brain.
Saying, why do I have that habit in the first place? Like, what am I trying to feel?
Really want to get down to the root. Ooh.
Yeah. So, and with specifically cigarettes, it was, distracting me, pulling me out of the group, going outside, when I didn't want to deal with something, I would, step out, smoke a cigarette, think of something else, but it really is, it was the distraction of it, and then also allowing me to get out of situations that might have been overwhelming me.
Sure.
And it also forced me to have to face my anxiety, because like sometimes I would smoke, but then I would realize like sometimes it would make it worse, because now my heart rate's up, and, then I'm like already thinking about the next one, and there was a lot of guilt with it for me. Every time I would smoke one, I'm like, what am I doing? Because I always knew that it wasn't great. I'm like, I smell weird. Like, my mouth tastes gross. I don't know why I'm doing this. So I shamed the crap out of myself for years, So
that's the toxic cycle.
It was.
So can we break that cycle? Can we stop beating up on ourselves?
Right.
Like, can we just, how often do we change out of pain or guilt or shame?
Right.
No, we don't. That's fueling. It's whenever we invite our demons, like we were talking about earlier, when we invite them to tea.
Right.
And sit down and
say,
talk.
What are you really trying?
Yeah.
What are you trying to convey here? Like, what are you trying to tell me?
Instead of just like being like bad. Like, yeah, that really works really well.
Yeah,
how's that working for you?
You really went away that time. Yeah, I feel you. So, all right. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of the episode. So, could you share with our listeners the best way to contact you and keep up with future events?
Absolutely. So, if you're interested in finding out more about the sisterhood and you have social media, Facebook is a good way to start. You could Google search or Facebook search Celestine Sisterhood. That is our group. And like I said earlier, all I have to do is approve you. So there's no questions or anything like that. So just come on over there. Also, I've been posting on Facebook the sisterhood circles. The next one is coming up on the full moon, November 19th, and that's on a Friday evening at 6:30. This is at my friend Laura's metaphysical shop in Knoxville, Mystical Beginnings. And then if you want to book a session, a healing session with me or empowerment coaching, or a soul reading, you can just go directly over to my website, www.celestineharmony.com.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming out.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Anytime if you come up with some topic that you just want to share with people, you're always welcome on the show. So,
Love you, girl.
all right, love you too. All right, thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next week on the Astral Hour.